Head over to miniaturemarket.com where they have thousands of board games at discounted prices, and you can sign up for product alerts. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and welcome back to my 101 Best Games of All Time video series, where today we're going to be looking at numbers 40 to 31. Now if you've missed any of the previous ones, you want to go back, you can see the links below. You can also click up here to see the last one that was released. Without further ado, let's get started. My number 40 is a city building game called Suburbia. In this case, it's the collector's edition from Bezier games. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Suburbia is the definitive city building game for 1 to 4 players where you'll be planning, building, and developing your small borough into a major metropolis. You're trying to end up with the largest population, and you'll do so by raising your reputation, by placing tiles similar to the video games SimCity and Skylines. But not all tiles gain you reputation like the museum or the recycling plant. Some of them lose you reputation like the slaughterhouse or the office of bureaucracy. But those tiles can gain you more income each round depending on how you've built your city and how others have built theirs. That income will help you purchase other tiles that gain you even bigger benefits like the new car dealership, or help you purchase a tile you really need before your opponents get a chance to. As your borough grows and its population increases due to well planning and execution, instead of the game getting easier, it actually becomes increasingly difficult since your borough costs more to maintain and its small town feel will decrease. This reduces your income and reputation as your population grows past red roofs on the score track. There's also tension in trying to beat your opponents to public goals like having the most residential tiles or the least amount of reputation, as well as the satisfaction of fulfilling your own private goal. Yeah, Suburbia is my favorite city building game, and I actually really like city building games. If it's a city building theme, I'm already automatically interested in it. I used to spend tons of time as a kid on the Nintendo playing SimCity, and my love for that game kind of translates to board games. And so this one, in my opinion, does it the best. There's a lot going on. It's really cool because not only what you build depends on how your city does, but also what other players are building. So many times in so many games it's like a solitaire effort, and this isn't that because you're drafting other tiles, you're discarding tiles that you don't want others to have. But like if my neighbor or somebody else on the table has an airport, it might affect what happens with my tiles and when I get an international airport, or the restaurants and things like that. They all sort of intertwine with each other, and I love that. Now, the other really cool thing about this is the way that the income and reputation work. Like every round, you're building up an engine of income, money, and reputation, which is points. So every game you're pushing this up, and at the end of every turn, you're getting this, you're getting that. But as you go further up and you get further in the point structure, it becomes a little bit harder to keep your city going. And so it gets a little bit harder, and your income and reputation actually get knocked down a little bit. So as you get better and better and your engine gets going, you don't just take away as a runaway leader. It kind of holds you back a little bit, making things just as difficult as they were before, even though it's even more exciting than at the beginning. This is the best city building game out there. Now the collector's edition is my favorite, obviously, because it's amazing. But there is a second edition out as well, which used the artwork that was made for this version, the collector's version. And it's the same artwork. Essentially, you don't have the recessed player boards for the cubes. You don't have the cool, humongous tower to hold the tiles. It doesn't come with the expansions like the collector's edition does. So if you didn't want to spend as much money on a collector's edition, you can still get the second edition and have this cool artwork and have a lot of it be the same. Suburbia number 40. My number 39 is a game about the Electoral College election system in the United States called Campaign Trail. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Campaign Trail is an election-style game for 1 to 6 players where each player is going to have their own candidate with some special abilities throughout the game. And depending on the amount of players, you'll be having up to 3 different parties on the board, and you might be playing with teams or not. Over the course of the game, you're going to be playing multi-use cards, which give you many choices like campaigning in certain regions and placing voters in certain states trying to take over that state. And you'll immediately be updating this cool Electoral College scoreboard to see who has what states and who's in the lead. And you'll also be advertising in certain states that have certain issues. Or sometimes you're playing cards for special actions that do all sorts of different things. Sometimes you'll just be raising money to do certain actions, or getting more registered voters so you can take more actions, or traveling around up to a certain amount of states, or maybe even to a city. But at the end of each month, you'll have a debate in a certain city, and all this is different every game. The debates have a very clever mechanism where you play cards and move certain issues down your track, and if you have this at the end, you'll get that many votes in each of the states that have that issue. After 3 rounds of 2 debates, whoever has the most is the winner. This game was my strategy game of the year 2 years ago when it first originally came out. Now, it was originally published by Cosmic Wombat Games, and I remember going to Gen Con many years ago when they were first working on this game. It was a passion project for the designers, which are family members. I think it's 2 sons and a father. And I remember seeing the game and running to this like little non-descriptive table in the middle of nowhere in Gen Con and learning more about it. And I was really excited when it first came out, and I really loved it. I like these election style games because typically they are card driven, and it's basically area control. And that's what this is, with the different areas being worth different amount of points. So if you're not familiar with the electoral system in America, it doesn't matter. It's basically area control. The other cool thing is multi-use cards. Those cards are cool because there's like 6 possibilities that might be on that card, but usually I think it's just 3 of them or 4 of them that you get to choose from. So you might be using that card for money, or you might be using it to travel, or to campaign, or to use a special ability, or to bring in and register voters. And so you're trying to figure out which things to do with which cards. And so you have a hand of cards and you're sort of planning out multiple turns. 2 other really cool things about this game is the scoring track is awesome, where you can see all the states and their values, and as you take over a state, you immediately take that state from them and put it in your track so you can see what the score is. You can see just by looking at the score track, if I take this state over, I'm gonna be taking the lead. I like that. And also, usually electoral system games are 2-player only, and this one plays many players. So you could play a 2-player and it's great, but you could play 3-player, 4-player, 5-player. Doesn't matter. When you play 4-player, you play teams, which also works really well. This game's great if you like area control or you like election style games. This one's fantastic. Number 38 is a logic deduction game from Osprey Games called Cryptid, where you're trying to find the single cryptid monster out in the wilderness somewhere. So let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. You'll be trying to deduce which one of these locations is where the cryptid is, and you'll win the game. Each player gets their own secret clue book, and every game they get a specific secret clue number, which tells them what their secret clue is. So that player secretly knows that the cryptid could be in any spot that is within 1 space of any of these swamp spaces. But all the other players get their secret clues as well, and you're trying to find what are all these secret clues, because once you know them all, you can find the cryptid and win. And you learn information by questioning a player of your choice of a specific area. And no answers, symbolized by cubes, lets everyone in on information. And everyone knows what are the possible clues you're trying to rule out to figure out what everyone's secret clues are. You're trying to rule out information as fast as possible, but you have to be careful because every no answer you get forces you to place a no answer somewhere else on the board, giving up information to everyone else. But if you think you know where the cryptid is, you can try to win by searching in a location, and if no one else is able to disprove it, well, then you've won. But be careful, because if at least 1 player can disprove it, you've just given out a lot of information about your secret clue. The game has over 50 replayable setups and solutions in both beginner and advanced formats. Yeah, immediately when I saw this game at Gen Con the year it came out, I was like blown away by this because I love deduction. It's my favorite genre, I'd say. And if you like sort of straight logic deduction like Clue and other deduction games like that, this is awesome because it's kind of like, it's very different because you're trying to figure out where this monster is and you have one of the pieces of the puzzle. And the game scales really well. It plays 3 to 5 players. There's a 2-player variant that works if both players are very familiar with the game. Other than that, 3 to 5 players is where you play this game. And everyone has a different piece of the puzzle, and it's really cool because it has this clever book that, depending on the amount of players, it'll tell you what you know. And so you know like a little bit of where this monster is, but you're trying to figure out what the other player's sort of secret clue is. And once you get them all, you've locked it into 1 hex on the board. And it's really clever because you've got to ask these questions in a way by, hey, I'm looking at this and I'm asking you. You have a lot of flexibility of who you ask and where you're asking about. And the really clever thing is when someone asks you a question, when you ask a question to someone, if the answer is no, you also have to place some information on the board. And you have to think very differently in this game where it's like, oh, I'm gonna give them some information. I wanna try to give them some information that doesn't give them anything new. And so there's a lot of strategy in the board and what clues you've given them. Plus all the clues are out on the board. If you don't like spreadsheet style deduction games, this one might be for you because there's actually no note taking built into the game, although it says you can take any notes you want. I've actually made my own deduction sheets for the game, but you don't have to use those. In fact, some people don't like using those because they don't come with the game. So if you don't like taking notes and things like that, this might be a good one because it's very spatial, it's very visual. You can kind of just look at all the clues and deduce things. Cryptid, fantastic deduction game. This next one is one of the best party games ever. It's a trivia game that is different. Now, most of the time when you pull out trivia games, people are like, ugh, they have this like bad thoughts of playing Trivia Pursuit all night long where nobody knows these obscure answers and you wait for someone to get 6 pies. So usually when you say we're gonna play a trivia game, people like have that bad thought in their head. They don't wanna play. But this one is so different because you don't have to know the right answer. In fact, the questions are designed so that nobody really should know the answer. Like, how many steps are there in the Empire State Building? Well, I don't know. But you're gonna try to guess, and all the answers are numerical, and once everyone has secretly written their answer down, we flip them over and we put them in order from lowest to highest. Now in the middle is sort of like the median. So people are gonna bet on which one they think is right. You don't have to bet on your own. You could bet on someone else's, but you can bet on your own. So in the middle, it's a pretty safe bet because it's sort of in the middle of all the ranges and you'll get like a 2-to-1 bonus if you bet on that. But the ones further out, you might get as far as like 6-to-1 because it's less likely to be right because most people thought it was much higher or lower than that. So it's very clever, it's very simple. It's great with smaller groups, but it's also great that you can play this with as big a group as you want. I once ran this at a child center for 100 kids. There were 10 kids at each table and they all came up with their answer and bet together. And it works well. You can have a big game show version of this. This is the best trivia game out there, period. And it's one of the best party games in my library, Wits and Wagers. This version that's out now is called It's Vegas Baby. Adds a little bit more betting options like black or red and things like that. It's really cool, Wits and Wagers. This next one is a social deduction game called One Night Ultimate Werewolf from Bezier Games. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. One Night Ultimate Werewolf is a hidden identity game where players take on the roles of werewolves, villagers, or special characters with powers. Most of you will be on the village team and will be working together to find at least one werewolf hiding among you. But the werewolf team is doing their best to avoid being caught by claiming to be a member of the village team. You can download the free One Night app on your smartphone or tablet to get started playing quickly. Roles are dealt out secretly to each player. And the app will walk through the rest of the night phase, having certain players open their eyes and use their special powers in secrecy. Then the players will open their eyes and work together to find out who's really on the village team or werewolf team by deciphering who is telling the truth and who isn't. You can use the tokens to keep track of your assumptions. But you have to hurry up since you only have 5 minutes before you all must simultaneously vote on who the werewolves are. Now, this is one of my favorite social deduction games where it's all about trying to figure out who are the werewolves, right? And what are they doing? And sometimes who's the tanner who's trying to themselves get thought of as a werewolf. So you're trying to figure out, hey, who are the good people? What's happening? Everyone gets to do something while players' eyes are closed, you know? And you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to follow the logic. Nobody has perfect information, but everyone has a little bit of information. You're trying to figure out who the werewolves are, who's the ones that's looking like they're guilty. But again, sometimes there might be the tanner in the game and they're actually trying to be accused because they win if they are. So it's really interesting. Lots of different roles. It's quick. It's like a 5-minute game. It's so fast. That's why it's called One Night Ultimate Werewolf, because each game is like one night. But you could play it. You will never play this game just once. You'll always play it over and over and over again. At least 5 times you'll play it in a row. Sometimes one night. I mean, we've played this for hours at one time, late in the night. There's also many versions of this. This is the original. They also have an expansion. They also have One Night Ultimate Vampire, an Alien, supervillains, and you can actually mix and match all the rules from all the different ones as well. There's also a really cool app that helps you run the thing. It actually helps moderate the beginning of who's doing what, depending on what roles are in the game. This is a fantastic social deduction game, One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Number 35 is another party game. This is called Time's Up Deluxe, or Time's Up these days. I think they took the deluxe name out of this. This is a big group game from R&R Games, and it's all about this. There's two versions. There's one that's about people and historic figures and culturally, relevant figures these days. And then there's also like a title recall, which is more about like titles of movies and songs and things like that. I like the person one better. But everyone at the beginning of the game is you're splitting up into two huge teams usually. You can play with more teams, but I think it's best with two. No matter how many players you have. We once played a game of this with I think 40-something people, and each team had at least 20 people on it in a huge room. It was so fun. Each player is getting a few cards of some of these people, and you get to see the answer. Then they all get shuffled up, and then when it's your turn, you have, I think it's a minute or 30 seconds, the player flips over a card. There's 3 rounds. In the first round, the players are trying to get their group to say who the person is, and they can pretty much do anything. They can say things, they can make noises, they can do charades, they can do all sorts of things. They can't say rhymes what their sounds like or something like that. But they're trying to get them to do it, but they can't pass in the first round. And you're trying to get multiples of them in a row, trying to get a bunch of points. When the time runs up, it goes to the next team. And this keeps going back and forth to the end of the first round. Then, at the end of the first round, you get to actually reread all of the cards. So they're all in people's heads, and those cards stay for the rest of the game. They get shuffled up. And then in round 2, you can only say one word, but it's the same people. So clues and things, callbacks from previous attempts or previous ways of getting this correct always seem to come back in different ways. After the second round, after all the cards are done, the last round, there's no talking. And it's amazing that how like one little symbol gesture can make someone guess who this is. It's like crazy. It's so fun. I've cried playing this game. I've laughed so hard. Time's Up, fantastic. One of the best party games ever. Number 34 is another deduction game. It originally came out as a game called Think Straight with the number 8 at the end of that. And that was from Hook, H-U-C-H, in Europe. And that game, the game itself is absolutely amazing. If you like sort of brain burnery, spreadsheet style deduction games, you're gonna love this. Now in this game, you have these numbers that are in front of you that you can't see, kind of like Code 777 if you ever played that. And you're trying to figure out what those numbers are. And during the game, you're asking players, you're predicting what range of numbers are certain of these cards are, because there's colors and numbers. So in a round, it might be like, hey, you're blue plus purple. That's what we're doing. And so you're gonna think, okay, my blue plus purple, and you'll guess a range of numbers and say, I think it's worth 15. And then other players are gonna tell you if it's in that range or not. Now, the bigger the range, the less the points. The smaller the range, the more the points. So the more sure you get of things, the better you'll get. But when you guess wrong, you have to take that card and basically take it out of the game, which now you have information of what that was, but then you replace it with a new card and everyone else except you gets even more new information. The cool thing is when you screw up like that and you see information, you can look back earlier in the game and earlier rounds and go, oh, it was in this range and that card actually was a 6. That means that this purple card back then had to have been a 4, and now you know that. There's a lot of independencies between the game. It's fantastic. And at the end, when you're guessing your numbers, if you guess one of 3 numbers, you'll get 2 points. If you guess 2 numbers, you'll get 2 points. If you guess one number, you know it for sure and you get it right, you get 5 points for every number. So to push your luck at the end as to how sure do I know this number, or do I want to take a guess because I'm sort of far behind, I have a 50-50, I'm gonna guess 1 and try to get 5 points versus 2, but if I don't guess it, I get 0. So a lot of press your luck there as well. It recently went on Kickstarter, a new beautiful version. The first version was the worst production I've ever seen in a production game ever. It was worse than most Kickstarter prototypes. Awful. This new version, Lost Code, it did not fund, but I think it's going to be going up again from Mojito Studios. Lost Code is basically the same game to look up because that's the one that's going to be coming out at some time in the future. Lost Code or Think Straight. Number 33 is a social deduction game. It's a very obscure title from Europe. It was a small print run. It's called Mayday Mayday. In this game, there are good people, and you are sort of like crew. You're the pilot and the airline, the crew there helping all the passengers and such. And there are some people that are trying to bring the plane down and get in the cockpit. And so in this game, it's interesting because in most social deduction games, you are trying to deceive players, and a lot of that's like hearsay, a lot of it's above the table, a lot of it's things you did earlier that no one can quite remember all the details of. In this game, the good players win if, one by one, they're able to select who the captain is for that round and bring players into the cockpit. And every player has to be a good player. If one bad player gets let in, the bad guys win. So the stakes are super high in this game, and the good guys gotta play perfectly. But it's balanced by everything that anybody does in this game stays out on the board. So there's like regular hearts and there's cracked hearts, and you get to look at cards to players to your left or your right. In fact, Good Cop, Bad Cop uses this sort of mechanism where you have 3 cards and either 2 are going to be bad and 1 good, or 1 good and 2 bad. You're trying to figure this out. This came out before that game. But you're going to be looking, and if you see good, you put a good heart. If you see bad, you put a cracked heart. But like in most social deduction games, the bad players can lie. But those tokens that you say things are stay out for the whole game. So if you slip a lie, it better be well placed and at the right time, because there's a chance that someone might go look at that later and call you out. But then again, do we believe them? You never have perfect information. This game is a longer social deduction game, 45 minutes to an hour, but it ratchets up the tension like no other social deduction game I own, which is why it's so high on this list. I think it's out of print. It's very hard to find. It is a little company in Europe. Mayday Mayday is the name of the game. And you've got to check this out if you like very tense social deduction games. Number 32 is an older game. It was one of the first games I reviewed, actually, like the first year I was doing this. I've been doing it for 9 years now. And this is called Cinque Terre, and this is the 5 Villages from Rio Grande Games. This is sort of a family-style game. It's a beautiful, vibrant game where you're taking your truck and you're moving around in a clockwise manner, and you're going around the fields and you're collecting vegetables and fruits. Then you're going to the 5 villages on the coast and you're dropping them off and selling them. And the cool thing about this game is a lot of cool things. It has a lot of similarities to Ticket to Ride, but feels very different. It's pick up and deliver, not route building. But you are sometimes picking up cards to be able to get goods. But then each game, those goods are going to be worth a different amount depending on some initial rolls of dice during setup. So one game, the cucumber might be worth 6, and one game might be worth 1. And you're like, well, why would you ever get the one that's worth 1? Because when you sell that, it's going to be worth whatever that die pip is for that at that location, that game. Well, because you're trying to fulfill goals, and these goals, you might have a bunch of the ones that have lower numbers, but you're gonna get a lot of points for fulfilling that goal. And much like Ticket to Ride, where you build a route and you finish your tickets and you're trying to find tickets that will reuse that route, same thing here. You might have sold an orange to this village and an eggplant to this village, and you're gonna try to find other objective cards that also have those in that village, because you can piggyback on things you did earlier. So if you like Ticket to Ride weight games and some of the mechanisms in there, but you want something that's like feels completely different but has some of those hooks and similarities, this is a great one for that. Cinque Terre. Number 31 is an abstract strategy game, and this is called Santorini. Let me give you a 1-minute overview of how this works. Santorini is a beautiful, 3-dimensional abstract strategy game where you're trying to get to the top of a 3rd-story tower to win the game, and it's for 2 to 4 players. During the game, you'll be moving one of your 2 people to any place around it, and then building anywhere around it. Maybe a level 1 building, or maybe a level 2, or if that was already built, maybe a level 3, or if that's already built, maybe a dome so someone can't jump onto the top. But you can shake the game up by adding god powers. There's some simple ones, like being able to move more than one spot, or building a dome at any level, or if you move up, your opponent can't move up that turn. There's also some advanced gods which do things that are more complex. All in all, 30 total gods to make the game different every time you play. Yeah, Santorini is amazing. Now there's 2 versions, one that just came out recently. So the first one is Santorini. I'm putting these both together because they're very similar, even though they're also very different, and I like them about the same. Santorini, the reason why I love it, is the original, is it's a very clever, easy to play, it plays 2 to 4 players, but it's really a 2-player game. The first version does not play well with 3 or 4 players. It's basically, if you like 2-player games that are sort of chess-like in the fact that you're looking 2 or 3 moves ahead, and there's like, once you set up the game, there's no luck. It's just pure strategy. In each game, you have these powers that each player gets 1 power that they can use. And you can change those each game, and they have some basic ones, and they have a lot of advanced ones. This game has a ton of replayability, but you're trying, as you saw, you're trying to get to the top of one of those towers to win. Sometimes the game can take 5 minutes, sometimes it can take 30. It just depends on how you think and how you get locked in. And it's so simple, it's easy to teach, it's beautiful on the table, great table presence, three-dimensional buildings, it looks like Greece, like Santorini. The game is fantastic, one of the best abstract games I own. Now Santorini New York is the newer one. That one's only sold, I think, in mass market stores. And it has a lot of similarities, but that one is actually much better with higher player counts. It's still really good with 2, but it also plays higher player counts better, but there is randomness involved in this. It's more of a tactical game where what am I gonna do right now versus the original Santorini is like, what am I doing turns 2, 3, and 4 from now that I'm planning? The other one, there's a lot of different cards and roles you can mix in as well, but it's more of a hand management and card game where you're playing a card and you're taking the ability of that specific role. But there's certain roles and everyone sort of has cards of the same types of roles, where in the original you have 2 completely different powers. So you're trying to play cards, they have certain numbers in that one that give you the turn order. Same type of win conditions, there's one different way to win in that one as well, but if you like abstract strategy games, either one of these is great. They're different enough, and they're different enough where, like, again, Santorini is great with 2. Santorini New York is really good with more than 2, but also good with 2, depending on how you play or what you play, and whether you like pure chess-like strategy or abstract that has a little bit of randomness in there as well. It's more tactical. That's the difference between those two, but they're both fantastic. The last one for this list, number 31, Santorini and Santorini New York. All right, there you go, 40 to 31. We are getting to the top very quickly. In a few days, I'm gonna be launching a video with Greg Dixon where he tries to debunk my list, and we talk more about the experiences that we both had with these games in more detail. So make sure you check that out, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified. This has been a Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games by helping you find the next one you'll love. My number 40 is, in my opinion, the best city Game Toppers not only transforms your existing table to a high-quality gaming solution, they now offer full leg kits and dining cover solutions for the full table application. Paired with their amazing, thematic, premium stitch edge mats from noted board game artists like Vincent Dutray, collapsible cup holders, and really cool accessories, it's a complete system that upgrades every game you play. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below.